Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the Outside and Active podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We're actually at the National Snow Show. You've just been on stage talking. How was that?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, it was such an honour as well to open it up, I guess, and be the first speaker of the show. And it was just so nice just to, get stuck into it, just chat to everyone and have a few meet and greets after. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Good. And you'll be roaming around talking to different exhibitors and people and brands and just seeing what's about.
Yeah, I'm here all day, so yeah, just gonna have a little browse. Haven't had a chance to actually look around properly yet, and head over to the little slope as well and see everyone learning how to snowboard. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun day.
Amazing. So we start this podcast. All of our guests have a piece of advice that's given to them from a previous person that's come onto the episode, and your piece of advice comes from a lovely lady called Sally Orange, who very aptly likes to run marathons, ultra marathons, set Guinness World Records dressed as fruit. Started with oranges.
Okay.
And then became other pieces of fruit. I think she's stretched into cheese now. Don't know why. But her piece of advice for you is if you're going to do an event or a challenge or go to a competition that might be quite stressful, making you nervous, then try and make your mindset be that you're going for the time of your life. Eradicate all of that stress. You're going for the time of your life and you're just going to enjoy it. How are you when you're competing? Do you get quite nervous? Do you get quite stressful? Or are you actually quite relaxed that you're in control of what's happening?
Oh, I'm terribly nervous, and I always have been. I've been competing since I think I was maybe 5 years old, because I've been a gymnast and a snowboarder, competing in both. And yeah, since day one I've been nervous at competitions, but I kind of view it as my superpower now, because although I am ridiculously nervous, I usually manage to pull it out of the bag every time and land my run. So yeah, I just accept it now. I'm like, okay, it sucks being that nervous, but it pays off, and I just have to kind of run with it.
Yeah, you started from a young age. Three years old you were on skis. 3,
I was on skis, started snowboarding at 5.
Wow. What was it that got you into that, or was it family, friends, just a general interest at that young age?
It was actually my mum and dad, so they were both keen snowboarders. They went snowboarding at my local dry slope in Halifax, and my cousin Jamie Nichols, who's also a professional snowboarder, he started out around the same time as well, and it was like a big family thing. We all went on like snow holidays together, so it was just natural that eventually I wanted to be on a snowboard as well, because my family were all doing it, and it just kind of took off. Like started off as a hobby, absolutely loved it, and just progressed naturally, because at the time it wasn't even an Olympic discipline, the one that I did, slopestyle and big air, so I was just doing it for the pure joy of it. And it was only later down the line, when I was still progressing and doing all the UK comps and stuff, that I was like, oh wow, I could actually become professional at this and do it at the Olympics.
Was that you realising that? Did you have people telling you? Did you kind of realise, oh, I'm kind of doing this better than the people around me? This could be something that I could go on and do. Yeah,
like I've always had this really big competitive streak in me, so whether it was in gymnastics or snowboarding, I wanted to win and I wanted to be the best, and I constantly wanted to just better myself. And so when I got told that they were putting slopestyle in the Olympics, I was like, oh my god, like I could actually become an Olympian. But yeah, I've just always had that in me, that like need to continue bettering myself and progressing. And even now as an adult, I view it as a competition with myself, not so much the other riders. I just want to better me.
And how does gymnastics play a role in snowboarding? I presume it's the same with skiing as well. How does that help?
Yeah, gymnastics, I mean, I'm so lucky that my mum and dad took me to both at the same time. And it only started out because apparently I was bouncing off the walls, as a kid. I had so much energy. So my mum was like, okay, if you're doing cartwheels and all these flips in the house, you need to do it in a safer environment. So she took me to gymnastics, and thank God that she did, because, I probably wouldn't be the snowboarder I am today without it, because, they both go hand in hand with the spatial awareness, muscular strength and endurance that you need in both sports. And especially snowboarding, you need to know where you are in the air. So the spatial awareness really, really helps with that.
Did you get involved in any other sports, or was it snowboarding and gymnastics was kind of the focus?
I mean, I've always dipped in and out of other hobbies, not so much like growing up, gymnastics and snowboarding were my sports. Like those were what I would do after school. But then I had hobbies like climbing. Like I often climbed a lot with my friend. We just walked down to the local climbing centre, and I'd do that in my spare time. A lot of cycling as well. Try and go surfing every year if I can down in Cornwall. bit of skateboarding. So yeah, I've dipped in and out of different sports as hobbies, and to be fair, I'm still doing that now. I absolutely love trying new things.
And people listening to this, a lot of people will know who you are. A lot of people might not have heard of you, and it would be interesting to know, obviously, snowboarding, people can get their heads around, but what is it that's your discipline? What are you best at?
So I do slopestyle and big air, and slopestyle is basically a run where you've got roughly 3 or 4 jumps and 3 or 4 different rail features, and you have to get top to bottom doing tricks and spins on each feature, landing it and basically doing the best that you can do and getting a good score. Big air is just 1 jump, so you have to do like your biggest and best trick basically. So yeah, not as full on as slopestyle, but similar in the fact that you still have to do your best. So yeah, freestyle disciplines.
And that sounds scary. As someone who has not done that, where does that kind of no fear attitude characteristic come from? Have you always had that from a young age?
I think I've always had that, where I haven't really had much fear, especially, when you start sport so young, you don't really know the concept of fear properly. Yeah. So you just kind of like throw yourself in, and you're more robust as well. You can have big falls and be absolutely fine. And I think starting so young really helped me. And I've always had I've been a bit of an adrenaline junkie, I'd say. I think I was just born that way. I love adrenaline. I love, pushing my limits, essentially, and I still do now. And, as an adult, I know the risks now more than I did when I was a child. I've had my fair share of injuries, so I know the risks. So sometimes fear does creep in a little bit, but I know how to deal with that now, whereas getting into the sport, I didn't really have a clue. I was just like, this is so much fun, and that's all I really cared about.
And just to give people an idea of how obviously good you are at doing what you do, and you're 25 now, you've been competing on obviously being on a snowboard, on skis for a long time, but 15 years old, you become the youngest girl to land a double backflip on snowboard. I can get my head around that.
Yeah.
But then at 16, world's first female backside double cork 1080.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible name. And probably a lot harder to do than it is to say. But what is that? How did that come about? And then the feeling of being able to actually achieve that.
Yeah, so a backside double cork 1080, it's basically where you go off a jump and you do like a double somersault. So you go around twice whilst doing 1080 degrees spinning rotation. So it's really complicated and hard to get your head around even just saying it. But yeah, it's like a corkscrew double flip, essentially, in the easiest way to put it.
How do you, saying that, it's like when you try and order something off a restaurant or a menu that you have no idea what it sounds like. But
yeah.
How... In terms of when you're in the air, there must be times where you obviously don't know what's up and down, left and right. Is that over time you kind of get used to the feeling of how many milliseconds in you're at that position of it? But how does it kind of start from doing basic flips to achieving that? Is it just practice and time?
It is, yeah. A lot of it, like with the double cork 1080, I'd put a lot of prep into it beforehand, and it was a trick that no girl had ever done before. So I'd prepped it with my coach over in America because we didn't have the facilities over in the UK. And before that, I had no idea what that trick was. Only guys had done it, and I'd look at it and think, I don't have a clue what is going on in that trick. But it's all about spatial awareness and knowing where you are in the air. And again, gymnastics help with that, and doing it into foam pits first over in America really helps me to get comfortable with that feeling and kind of knowing where I am, because when you're spinning that quick and you're going upside down more than once, it's hard to see. Essentially, you're just kind of relying on the feeling of where you are. So yeah, you really have to hone into that spatial awareness and kind of knowing how many times you've gone round, and then when you feel like you've done it, you have to open out, and then you look in for the landing and riding away. But yeah, there is a lot of preparation that goes into tricks like that, because the risk factor does go up. So you want to make sure that before actually trying it on snow for the first time, that you're 99% sure you're going to be okay.
Have you noticed, since you've been competing in the industry for the last however many years, the more girls coming into the sport, the combination, the guys and the girls just being, obviously you're competing at, I guess, similar times when you're at the Olympics at the same time. Is it a lot more progressive now? Was it difficult to begin with? Kind of give people an idea of that industry.
Oh, it's changed so much over the years in female snowboarding. You know, starting out, I actually had to learn on a boys' snowboard because girls' snowboards just didn't exist.
Really?
Yeah, so it's crazy to think that the sport has come so far now. You know, you've got all girl brands for snowboarding and skiing as well. Girl snowboards from, you know, the teeniest little things so that you can start out on one when you're like 1 year old, for example, whereas that just wasn't a thing back when I was learning. And there were hardly any girls doing it, and the progression was a lot lower than it is now. So by the time I got to, you know, like Olympic standard, the standard was pretty high. But now, you know, just fast forwarding like 8 years from when slopestyle was first and put into the Olympics, the standard is ridiculous. It's through the roof, and it just keeps going that way. You know, girls are doing more double corks, some girls are even doing triple corks. Like, the level is just going up and up and up, and it's really exciting to be a part of that and to see the progression and to see girls getting recognised as well for that progression. And back in the day, you know, prize money was different. Guys would get it all, girls would get hardly anything, but now it's all very equal and people have more respect for us, and it's really nice to see that it's progressed in that way.
Good, as it should be.
Yeah.
So you're getting quite good at the snowboarding thing. You're building up, you're competing a lot, you're winning a lot of things, you're medaling. You're building up to the 2018 Olympics, Pyeongchang.
Yeah.
How long before that Olympics did you know that you were going?
So you actually only find out like 2 weeks before flying.
That seems crazy to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you kind of have a rough idea. So, for example, 2014, I tried qualifying for the Sochi Games, and all the way through qualifying, like, I had no idea because I was still young. I was only 15 at the time, and, you know, it was a dream to go, but maybe looking back, like, I missed out by one spot. So I wasn't like ready enough, essentially, like, or just unlucky, because going into 2018 I qualified, I think, in like second place, so it was like completely different story. But yeah, so 2018 I knew from the start that I would qualify, essentially, because I was consistently getting on the podium at World Cups, making all the finals, and you can kind of see and work it out in the world rankings where you are and how likely it is to qualify. So I knew months and months in advance, even like a season in advance, that I'd be fine. But yeah, you don't officially get the get-go until 2 weeks before.
And then you get all of the stash, you get all of the arrangements.
Yeah.
You just it must be all like a whirlwind.
It's literally like, go, like, go to kitting out, get your kit, get the flights booked, you know, get sorted. So yeah, it's a whirlwind those 2 weeks before.
But then what happened when you were training at the Olympics in 2018?
So yeah, I get to the Olympics, I'm like, oh my gosh, my dream's coming true. And I think the worst thing about the 2018 Olympics was that I actually was going there as a medal contender, and I knew it. Like, I podiumed at the test event the season before, so I was like, I can actually do this. And yeah, the day before, I think I was meant to compete in one of the training days, I just slipped off a rail first run of the day, like, freak accident, just warming up, and just broke my heel into two pieces. And I knew instantly. I was like, this is bad. I was like, not only am I out of the games, but this is actually a bad injury. Yeah. So it was just like a roller coaster of emotions. Like, I was gutted.
And how serious was the injury? Were you thinking, how fast can I get back on a board? Or was it, how long until I can actually walk again?
It was, I mean, initially I was just like, I just want to be out of this pain. It was the most amount of pain I've ever experienced. But then I had emergency surgery because it was so close to being like very disastrous, like the bone coming through the skin, sort of. So yeah, very gruesome. Nice. So I had emergency surgery in Seoul, and they put 2 pins in it because it was a very clean break, like straight into 2. And usually heel bones just shatter, they don't break like that. So I was like, oh, this is going to be really simple. Like, I'll be snowboarding by the end of the season. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be 3 months. But little did I know that was not the case. I mean, for the amount of pain I was in, like, looking back, I should have really known that there was something else going on, because my skin was dying from the inside out, but I had no idea. And the surgeons, he knew about it because essentially my skin had just turned black, but I couldn't see because I was like in bed, could barely move in pain. So I flew home and they took me straight to see a specialist in London, who was a skin specialist, and then he looked at it and he was like, we need to operate on this, and basically it was worst case scenario, so I had to then have another 5 skin operations, skin grafts, and then a further 2 operations after that when all the skin operations were done because my bone had healed too much and it had grown extra bone, so that had to be shaved off, and then getting the pins out. So 7 operations later, and it was finally fixed, but it was an absolute nightmare.
But you must have only been 19?
I must have been 20. I was 20, yeah.
And you've qualified for the Olympics, you're building up, you're there, your almost mindset's right, medals, competing, performing well, and then you have this drop-off of being injured, and then you have to go through all of that, and then you just don't know where you're going to land in terms of being able to get back on a board again. Where's your mindset there? Because that's difficult for anyone, but let alone a 20-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, like very hard mentally, and looking back, I'm like, no surprise. It was mentally challenging, but at the time I didn't have a clue what was going on with me. I was like, why am I like so sad all the time? But looking back, I'm like, well, it would probably be weird if I wasn't, because I just essentially had my Olympic medal dream like ripped from me. Was in the most amount of pain I've ever experienced in my life, and I had to miss 18 months of snowboarding. So it was, I'm not surprised I was I was struggling a bit, but luckily I did get through that, because I think I was battling with the fact that it was very close to being career ending, and I fully believed that like it was possibly going to be career ending at one point, because I couldn't walk without a bad limp. I actually tried snowboarding at one point because I was physically strong. My heel had healed, and all the muscles around it were strong. So I was like, I can try it, and I just couldn't do it. It was so painful, and that was terrifying, because I thought, what else am I going to do? I expected to be snowboarding for as long as I wanted and stop on my terms, not because of an injury. So it was a really scary time, but luckily, I persevered and I remained as positive as possible, and I got through it.
18 months must have been probably the longest time that you hadn't been on a snowboard since you were 5.
Yeah, so it was a long time. Yeah, it was really hard, and I missed being out with my friends. My whole life had just completely changed. I was just doing rehab every day, and luckily I did have an amazing team around me to help me get back, but it was not what I wanted.
No. And when you then eventually get back on, and it's a really positive feeling, I imagine, but it must also be quite difficult. Is there something in the back of your head going, last time I did this happened, or is it just, I'm so happy to be back doing this?
As soon as I got back on my board, I was so happy. Yeah, there wasn't any fear or doubt there, because I'd put the work in the rehab, so I knew that, it was 100% strong and stronger than before. My body was stronger than it was before. So I was just so grateful more than anything to be back on my board, because I thought for a long time that would never happen again. And I think that's why I then went on to have like the best season of my career, because I was just, living my life and having no pressure, no expectations put on me, and just, living in the moment, the present moment, and it all just kind of worked out for me after that.
So then you're building back up again for the 2022 Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
You qualify.
Yeah.
And then going into that again, I presume that's the same thing, 2 weeks out, you're told again.
Yeah.
What are your feelings going into that one?
So very different going into 2018, because although like technically they wouldn't class me as an Olympian because I didn't compete, I still felt very much an Olympian. I was like, I got there, I've experienced a bit of it, so I know what the vibe is. It wasn't going to be brand new. So I was like, okay, I've got experience under my belt. And I also had an extra 4 years experience on top of that. I was older, wiser. I just had the most successful season of my career by winning the Crystal Globe and another 5 or 6 podiums. 6 podiums in a season. So I was feeling, really good, and I had a good run that I was like, this could be challenging, like the podium, if I can put it down. So it was nice, because I'd learnt from my 2018 experience, and I was like, I'm not going to put any pressure on myself, not going to let any external pressures, build up or anything like that. But there are obviously still pressures, especially having such a good season. Everyone expects you to get a medal. But I just tried to remain as headstrong as possible and go into it. But obviously it was so different because of COVID. It was a crazy, crazy experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. What was it? Was it I mean, obviously enjoyable and fun and stressful, like all the things you said.
Yeah.
But how different was it from 4 years before?
So different. I mean, 2018, I think I was only there 5 days, but, you know, the vibe was just totally different. You'd be walking around the village, you can hang out with people, you can meet friends from other nations. You can basically just have the freedom that you want in the village. Whereas in Beijing, you know, you literally have to be so careful, not even just at the Olympics, but the run up to it. You know, if you get COVID, you're not going to the Olympics, so you have to be so careful. And it was very, very stressful.
When you get that negative test, whatever, it must be like, okay, I'm going.
Yeah.
Fine, just get me on the plane.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we were even seeing people who were testing positive once they arrived, and then they were just getting shipped off into like this holding place and having to wear like hazmat suits and all that, and I was like, that is scary. So I was like, I do not want that to happen. But luckily it was relatively smooth, albeit a very different experience, and you just get used to it. You know, you had to have daily COVID tests, and there was like a centre right outside breakfast, so you'd basically go get your COVID swab, go for breakfast, and that was just your morning routine, checking your temperature every day, masks literally 24/7 unless you're in the shower or sleeping or eating. So yeah, you got used to it. You know, at the start it was like, whoa, this is weird. But yeah, you got used to it, although it was very lonely as well. You couldn't really hang out with anyone else from the teams. You had to be so careful. So it was a lonely experience, but still an experience.
Yeah. And the other girls I presume you're competing with throughout the seasons as well, so you know them quite well. You said you're competitive with yourself. Mm-hmm. Is there just such a good atmosphere with everyone? Are you supporting each other? Obviously, you want to do as best as you can and put yourself in as best position as possible, but you must know each other so well, similar age groups as well. Yeah,
it's nice because once you get to that top level, it is quite small at the top and everyone knows each other, and you're constantly training at the same places, going to the same competitions, so you do get to just know everyone, and luckily snowboarding is a really nice environment, and there's always a nice atmosphere. You know, it is competitive, but not in a nasty way. It's I'd say it's a healthy competitiveness that goes on in the sport. So yeah, it is nice, and you do get to know everyone. So yeah, it's cool.
Was it nice when you got that first practice run out the way?
Yeah, definitely. To be fair, it was. I mean, when I was at the Olympics in Beijing, it was weird because I didn't realise I'd still have demons from the 2018 Olympics. You know, I got there and I was like, I don't want to be that girl that breaks herself 2 Olympics in a row. So that was constantly on my mind as well. So it was quite stressful, but I was like, I just need to do my best. All I can do is my best. And there were a lot stacked up against me, I feel, in Beijing, a lot of difficult conditions, but I gave it my all. I didn't really get the overall result I wanted, but I still went out there and I finally became an Olympian, after all those years of trying. And to be fair, I was I took a minute at the top of my first run to just be like, wow, I've come a long way. You know, 4 years ago, I thought that was it. I thought my career was over, and here I am at another Olympics. So I was like, I'm just going to do my best. If I land my run, I'll be more than happy. And I did. I landed both, so I was absolutely over the moon. I was like, thank God, and thank God I'm in one piece.
Yeah. Check the heels.
Yeah.
Still in one piece. So now is it about building up for the next one? Yeah,
definitely. I really want to go to the 2026 Olympics in Milan. That's going to be really nice because it's close to home. It's in Europe. Hopefully my family can finally go out and watch an Olympic Games.
Go to Beijing?
No, so they haven't seen anything yet, but I feel like they deserve to go and watch as well. And the food will hopefully be nicer, Italian food. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. We train regularly in Livigno, and that's where the slopestyle is going to be. So I feel like I at least know the area. I'm aware that it's going to be really cold, but I'm used to that kind of because we train there. So I kind of know the conditions as well. So yeah, it should be nice, and it's going to come around so fast.
Yeah, definitely. You come from an area from Yorkshire that isn't exactly best known or synonymous with snow and slopes.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a 5-year-old girl get into that industry, that world?
So I believe it's all about access to facilities, and I live 10 minutes away from a dry slope, and that's basically why I got into it. Had I have not lived there, I'd probably be doing some other sport, not snowboarding, but yeah, it was all about being 10 minutes away from Halifax and just going there every day after school on the weekends, riding with my friends, being part of that community. Like back in the day, it was a huge community. You know, it was always packed with people. Everyone knew each other. The atmosphere was amazing, and ultimately that led to, you know, where I am today, because I thrived off of that, and everyone would help each other, push each other, and that's what helped me to progress.
Amazing. And do you see yourself as an inspiration or someone to look up to, a role model for someone who might be in your position, would have been in your position when you were 5, looking up to the next person? Do you aware of that? Do you have conversations with people that they're interested in being where you are in 20 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was the only snowboarder, freestyle snowboarder at the last Olympics, so like I am really proud of that fact, and I really want to give back to like the grassroots community, and you know, I really want to inspire the young kids in Britain to get out there, put a snowboard on and have some fun, because you know, I didn't have to move to Europe or anything like that to become an Olympian. You know, I've lived in Yorkshire my whole life. I just had to work very, very hard to get to the top level, but you know, if you work hard and you have the passion, and you know, I've proved that you can do it, coming from where I've come from in West Yorkshire with no mountains. So yeah, that would be my biggest advice to anyone, you know, just if you've got access to a facility and you enjoy it, like go for it, because that's led to me becoming an Olympian, and yeah, that is essentially how I got there. I didn't have to move to the mountains or anything like that.
What would you say is your biggest achievement in your competing career to date?
I would say winning the Crystal Globe. Yeah, that's my biggest achievement. I think because it's always been on my bucket list to win it, because it's so hard to win. You know, you have to podium at pretty much every World Cup in that season, which is not easy. But I did it in my comeback season after breaking my heel, and that just meant everything to me. From basically going from near career end to, you know, winning my first Crystal Globe. It was the most amazing feeling, and I feel like even though, you know, I made my Olympic dream come true, the Crystal Globe still tops that.
So then if you got to a position where you medalled at the Olympics, would that sit up alongside it, or is that not something you could think about? I
mean, yeah, obviously I'd love to win an Olympic medal, who wouldn't? But even then, you know, it would be very competitive with whether I favour the Crystal Globe or the Olympic medal, because the Crystal Globe just has so much more meaning to it, I feel, with everything else. Yeah. But obviously, you know, who wouldn't want an Olympic medal?
Slightly different couple of questions before we get to the last couple. An ideal trip that you have done, and then the other side of that, an ideal trip that you haven't done but you would love to. It can be around snowboarding, you know, snow industry type thing, or it can just be anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say, like, outside of snowboarding, I just went to Bali, Indonesia. Always wanted to travel to that part of the world, have a bit of sun and heat for a change, because I've always I absolutely love the mountains, going to all these different snowy places, but I've never really gone on a proper summer trip, so that was amazing. Got to see a different part of the world, different cultures. And then I'd say a trip that I haven't been on but I want to would be Japan. Going to ride some powder in Japan. I've never really had a proper powder trip, and never really ridden much powder at all, actually. I usually just go straight to the park, but yeah, Japan's somewhere that I'd love to go.
I never realised until a friend has gone out there to ski as well, how big it is out there. I never realised, and so that would be
it's huge,
cool experience.
Yeah.
Definitely. And Bali, did you go when was it hot there, or was it like some people get where it's like tropic thunderstorms?
No, we were really lucky. I think we went in the off season. It was May when I went, but there weren't really. I think there was one day where it rained, and the rest was just warm. So, and it was like perfect temperature, not too hot, not too cold. Didn't need a wetsuit for the sea, which was lovely. But yeah, it was amazing.
So, what's next for you in the near future? What competitions, just carrying on training, building up towards that next Olympics? Right
now I'm focusing on my training, and then post-Christmas I've got a very, very busy World Cup schedule with World Championships as well this season. So yeah, it's going to be really hectic but really exciting as well.
Amazing. Well, best of luck for that. There's
Thank
only
you.
one more thing that we need from you.
Yeah.
You had a piece of advice at the beginning from the lady who wears fruit. Now is a piece of advice for you to give to someone coming on our podcast soon.
Okay, so my advice would be to have as much fun as possible. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Try and ignore the external pressures. And if you want to get to the top, then yeah, just have fun. Go ride with your friends or whatever you're doing, whatever sport you're doing. And hopefully that will work out, because that's how I got to the top level.
It worked out well for you.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you very much. Good luck for early next year.
Thank you.